So today everyone, we got another video taking place and we welcome back Mr. Michael Strachan. Some of you, hopefully quite a few, will remember that prior to Christmas we spoke about how to get that international CV, and it was very well received, wasn't it, Michael?
Yeah, lots of people contacted me thanking me for the content. So it's very nice to feel that I'm doing something positive for the community.
Yeah, it was amazing, and even myself, numerous different people, I think just via LinkedIn and even then on YouTube, and really, I'd say very generous and appreciative of you to give up your time and your experience as well to help out that, so thank you. Which kind of brings us on to today, so a belated Happy New Year to you. How's your term started?
Well, it started with a bang, really. It's been very, very busy. If you're here in Dubai, you know that there's been lots of going on in terms of COVID, etc. So lots of new rules and lots of cases. Unfortunately, we're dealing with that fairly well, I think, as a country. But it's interview season. So I think I said today, 3 or 4 interviews since I've been back. It's about 20, so it's all guns blazing right now. It's prime time season for getting staff in front of the camera and kind of making some judgments and hopefully getting some job offers out and getting some staff secured for the new year. So it's busy, busy, busy.
Which actually kind of brings us to the purpose of the video today, doesn't it? In terms of giving that your experience and your expertise on actually how to prepare for that interview. So just from your experience and your understanding, that this diving straight into it, what would you say the purpose of an interview is?
I think there are two parts to this. It's who you're asking about. Obviously, for me as an interviewer, looking at an applicant, I'm going to make a judgment as to whether this is someone who's going to be suitable for the school, could do a good job, and someone we want to be in our community and working with us. But then from the interviewee, they're obviously making a decision about the school. And quite often what happens is the interviewee thinks it's about getting a job, which in part it is, but it's about getting the right job. And I think sometimes interviews are so focused on trying to get a job offer, they forget that actually part of the process is them making a judgment about the school as well and about the people. So it's very much a two-way street. And I often say this when I'm doing interviews: do use this as an opportunity to make judgments and get information about the school to make sure you're making the right choice. Because if someone arrives in 6 months' time, hates it and leaves after a short period, that's in no one's interest. So it's really important that we get a right fit, us getting the right fit for the school, but also the candidate getting a right fit for them in terms of their job moving forward. So it's really important that everyone kind of leaves happy.
Yeah, I suppose it's more of a challenge nowadays, isn't it? Just because you get the Zoom conversation and you've got to get a feel for people. I mean, SLT, isn't it, really, that you're presented with? I mean, I've been in it back in the UK, I think probably when I was first getting into teaching. And I remember there was one specific school, and I wandered around and did the interview process and actually got to a point where it's like, you know what, this really isn't for me. And sometimes it's difficult, isn't it? It's having that confidence or to go, however much I really want to come out, I really want to be in this place, that's not the perfect fit for me. And sometimes, you want candidates to be able to say that prior, don't you? You can respect that rather than 6 months down the line they're going, I miss home, or this isn't working out for me. It's tough now, isn't it?
It absolutely is. What I would say is that, I feel sorry for candidates now because, when I was teaching in the UK, I'd go along and I'd be interviewed and I'd spend a day at a school. I get a feel, I get a tour with a student. Normally, I'd have a chance to spend some time in the staff room, etc. Now, international teaching, quite often you don't necessarily get that. You do it via Skype or via Zoom. But even if you were in the country with the restrictions right now, it's not possible to go in and see schools in many places. So quite often for a candidate, their only real insight into the school will be in the half an hour, 1 hour interview they have via the internet. So it's really key. It makes it even more important than it already was, because previously the interview maybe would usually be a part of the whole day, the whole selection process. Now it could be the selection process in terms of the interaction between the candidate and the school.
Yeah, and that's where we were kind of talking earlier about the sort of, nowadays, weirdly put it, but the significance of almost social media stalking. Actually, that benefit of LinkedIn or Facebook groups, like for us in Dubai, there is that, I think it's Dubai Teaching Network, and you can actually just go, hi, does anyone work in this school? What's your experience of it? There's always someone who knows someone, isn't there?
Yeah, so when I think that's a brilliant aspect of social media. When I first started teaching internationally in Qatar about, well, I won't say how many years ago it is because it's quite a long time. I'm trying to keep the mystique around my age, but it's quite a long time ago. Facebook was quite new at the time. That gives you a clue how long ago it was. And there was no real way to gain any information. It really was, taking a leap into the dark. But teachers now have the social media. There is LinkedIn. I regularly get people contact me that are coming for interview via LinkedIn, or I'll get them stalking my profile, having a little look. That's absolutely fine because they're trying to gather information. It's showing that they're doing their due diligence, they're finding out as much about the school as they can. And I think these Facebook groups are great. I mean, I think if I was going somewhere, I would definitely ask my friends that are in the same country or at the same school about it. But if you haven't got that link, that connect, the next best thing is going on to the Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups and just posting and asking for some insight. Because I think most people, in my experience, are really keen to help and support.
Definitely. Yeah, I've had the same experience with it as well. So let's dive into this then. Let's say, hopefully, someone's followed your advice from the previous email, they've written this fantastic CV, and then they get the email, we'd like to invite you for an interview, and the day arrives. Or even before that, even before the day arrives, let's talk about some of these things. So prior to interview, what would be your top tips for a candidate sort of preparing for an interview?
Sure. So it's going to sound really boring, but the first thing I would say is check that your setup works. So I have a number of interviews where the screen comes on and the sound's not working, or the camera's sideways, or the candidate's in complete darkness. I had a chap once who was holding his phone very, very close to his face, did the whole interview about 6 inches from his nose. So have a little run through. Try, if it's on Skype or Zoom, do a little practice run with someone to make sure your sound works, everything's up and running, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting 2 or 3 school members together ready to interview on a panel, and then it doesn't work because the candidate hasn't got things prepared. And also I'd say think about how you're going to present yourself. Yes, you're not physically in the school, but if you were going to a school for an interview, you would suit up. You put a jacket on, you put a tie, you'd make sure you look the part, you look smart. I appreciate you might only put that on for an hour while you're having the interview, but what that says to the school is, and what that would say to me is, this person's willing to make an effort. This person's taking this interview seriously, and so I take marks off if someone's got their top button undone, their tie is at half-mast. If they look I had candidates that were in gym wear. They've I've just come from the gym, so I've not dressed up. I was like, well, that means you've not really made much of an effort, and that kind of tells me how you view the school and how seriously you're taking this process. So I would say definitely prepare and make sure all the kit's working, and make sure you are looking the part before the interview, just like you would if you're going to a physical interview. That's the first tip I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I remember completely different sort of field of work. A friend of mine was out here, ex-army, and then set up his own sort of close protection. And he used to say all the time, it's like I'd have guys that come for an interview that were maybe ex-military or ex-police, those types of things. And then you'd have guys who would come who had SAS on their CV. And he said, actually, there's a few times where these are the guys, just, normal army guys would come up, suit, shirt, tie. And he goes, the SAS guys would just turn up in polo shirts. And he was like, if you're going to represent my company or representing this, it's like, just because they thought, I've got this on my CV, actually, that's good enough. And it's like, well, actually, it's not, isn't it? It's often actually about those first impressions and how you come across, because it's easy to forget that it's a profession. Teaching is a profession, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a profession. Also, it's customer service. If you think about it, really, you're having a customer service facing role. You'll be speaking to students every single day. Will you look the part for them? You'll be speaking to parents very often. Parents' evenings, presentations, etc., open days. So yeah, looking the part. It might sound very old-fashioned, but I think it is really, really important.
I agree. And that probably means, in terms of me, hair, shave, things like that.
You haven't got to completely move away from your personal style. I think you can have whatever hairstyle and beard you like, but I think if you've got it's more the clothes that you're wearing. I think don't take it personally, Alex.
Never will. All right, so we get into the day of the interview. We're getting closer and closer now. So we've got the setup works. We've got our outfit laid out in terms of that. So whether it's a blouse and a blazer for the ladies, or it's a shirt, tie, suit for the gentlemen. What other things can we be doing to sort of prepare for sort of the interview questions and what we're going to be asked?
Absolutely. So I think one of the key things it's very easy to say is make sure you're not too nervous going into it. So, don't start sitting down 5 minutes before. Make sure everything's set up and you're sat down, relaxed, have some water to hand, think about your posture, breathe. Don't get too nervous, because the school wants to see the very best of you, and they won't see that if you're nervous. And then I think in terms of preparing, there are only so many questions schools can ask. Really, Google common questions for teaching interviews. There are a select number. Now, we try and throw a few curveballs in there occasionally, but tell me about a good lesson you taught recently is a classic question. Tell me about your proudest moment in education. These sorts of things are common questions, and even if you haven't got that exact question. Just the process of going through and practicing those questions and rehearsing. Now, the key thing here is it's good to be polished, but you need to be honest. So there's no good kind of taking someone else's answer and mimicking that and kind of trying to pass it off as your own. Because as I said before, if you end up getting the job and it's the wrong school for you, no one wins from that. So I would often suggest to candidates to rehearse. Find someone in your school. I get many people coming to me that are looking to move on and say, can we do a mock interview? And I think most SLT middle leaders are more than happy to sit down and go through and do a rehearsal. But if you can't find that, rehearse to your dog, rehearse to your husband or wife. Just go through and practice saying some of those questions, because that will make you feel much more confident when you go into the interview itself, if you've kind of practiced going through those answers. And it means you won't feel as much on the spot when a question comes up.
It is amazing, isn't it, sometimes, in terms of until you hear yourself say something aloud, you might go, oh, actually, that doesn't sound right. And it's always good to practice. And one of the other points you're probably going to lead on to in terms of, I'm always guilty of this, in that I like to talk, believe it or not. And so when asked the question, it's then, I'll just tell you my entire life story. Now, for you sat on the other side, is that a good thing?
Well, don't feel bad, because all teachers like the sound of their own voice. That's a truism, I think. But yeah, you've made a really important point there. The two things I would say is listen to the question, because sometimes candidates will not receive the actual question. They'll go off answering a question that hasn't actually been asked, or don't talk too long. And that's one of the things, well, we are busy people. We'll have a set amount of time to interview you. That might be 30 minutes, and we might have someone, 5 minutes after you. So if you waffle, that means we've got less time to get through our questions. I often say, look, if you're asked a question, make a really key point, give an example of how you've done that in your career, and that should be enough. If you're talking for more than 2 or 3 minutes, you're waffling. So try and be nice and succinct. If you can't say it in 2 or 3 minutes, then probably it's not something you should be saying at all. So they're the key points that, listen to the question, think about the question, and don't rush to answer. It's absolutely fine to kind of take a minute, use water. So if you've got to have a think about something, grab your water, have a little sip of that to buy you, 10 seconds. But thinking time is great. I mean, we say to our teachers all the time when they're teaching, ask a question and don't take the first answer. Wait, give some thinking time. So it's absolutely fine to take some thinking time for yourself, be really thoughtful, and then give a good, succinct answer.
It's the idea of thinking slow, isn't it? I mean, I remember going through someone, it's like, and I think you even said it before, it's like, you can say, it's okay to say to someone, it's like, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, let me just think about this. And then they know it's not like you're just staring off into space. It's okay to say, oh, actually, just let me think about that for a minute, and then come back. It's, if that's going to help, as you say, with that succinct answer, it's going to be gold.
And if you're not sure, Alex, it's fine to say, sorry, could you repeat the question? That's absolutely fine. Just say, could you repeat the question? Even if you've got halfway through answering it and you've forgotten what the question was, just stop yourself rather than ploughing on regardless. Stop yourself and say, sorry, just could you repeat the question again? And they'll be happy to, well, I know most interviews will be happy to repeat the question to make sure that the candidate is on point. And I think that's absolutely fine to do.
Yeah. I think one of the questions that sometimes also throws candidates off is that, so tell me why you would want to come and work in this school, or, what would you bring to develop and move this school forward? And so what would be your advice for that?
Well, it's really obvious. Know the school. Like sometimes I'm interviewing candidates, they really haven't done any research. So do your research. You're applying to go and work at a place, a big institution. You want to make sure that it's the right place for you. So now with the the internet, websites, etc., go online, look through the school's literature, look through their options booklet, look through the website with a fine-tooth comb. It really frustrates me when we have candidates that kind of are applying and haven't done their background. So we'll ask a question around, let's say, for example, the IB or Emirati students, for example, and they've not really done their background research on that. It's really key. There's lots of things online like Ofsted reports, KHDA reports, go on which school's advisor. There'll be lots of information there. And it's really important to know what the kind of school is like. Is it a school that's going to be looking for a member of staff to really push Oxbridge applicants and that really high? Is it a school that will have lots of EAL? Is it an inclusive school where there'll be students with special educational needs? It's really important to know the school and research the school before you go to interview, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult for you to answer questions about, as you just said, what about this school? You can waffle generically about what in education or in a school, but what about that particular school? And if you can't do that, it sends a very clear message to the interviewers.
Yeah, I mean, for us over here, say if you were coming for an interview, let's say in Dubai, where would you go and look? What would you recommend to candidates in terms of websites or organisations to go and check out?
So the school's website, first of all, go there, and most of the schools here have got pretty good websites with most of the information. I'd say then go to the KHDA website and look at the last few inspection reports.
Yeah.
Inspections aren't everything, but they'll give you an idea, and you'll be able to see patterns there. What it breaks down is the core departments. So you'll be able to see is maths very strong, is science a bit weak. It'll give you that kind of overview. It'll tell you a bit about the demographics. It'll tell you about the staff turnover, how many staff are leaving each year. It'll tell you the student-teacher ratio. So there's lots of key information in there, and it will start to give you a bit of a feel for the school. The reports themselves are very, very thorough. Also, I think which schools advisor, Schools Compared is quite a good resource. No, it's more aimed at parents, and it's more giving parents information, but actually a lot of the data on there is very, very useful, and they spend a lot of time going through interviewing teachers, going through schools, to get information and present that to parents, and I think they are pretty thorough. So I'd say those two websites as well are a pretty good resource in terms of getting information on schools.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, when it comes to it as well, regarding, let's say, the impressions that we can give. So let's say we're dressed right, our setup works, we're answering succinctly, we know what we're talking about, but this age-old one, does this make me feel like I'm engaged with you?
Body language, yes, of course. If we think about it, what are we doing? We're employing someone to inspire children. That's really, if we kind of boil teaching down to its component parts, we're looking at someone who's going to be inspiring children, maybe inspiring children, on a Friday, period 6, after they had games, they maybe don't want to be inspired. And so we have to think about how we're presenting ourselves. So yes, think about your posture. Do sit up straight. Do face the computer properly. Do show good eye contact. Please don't have chewing gum. I mean, that's really important. I've had that a few times. Do show the interviews, but I'd say be passionate. I mean, if this is someone I'm going to put in front of a class of year 8s, is this person going to kind of grab their hearts and make them want to love geography or be super interested in organic chemistry? And if someone's not coming across an interview like that, it makes it very hard for me to imagine them with a tutor group or with a class and being passionate. And a really simple question is, would I want to learn from this individual? Would I want to be in this person's class? And if the answer for me is no, then it's probably not going to go much further. And I'm actually now, my daughter's getting a bit older, and I've started thinking, would I want my daughter to be taught by this person? Would I want her in their class? And I think that's the absolute litmus test. If it's a, well, no, probably not, then it's clear. So I would say be passionate. If you're, I've had people in the past say, well, I'm a really passionate teacher. In those kind of dark, well, he doesn't sound very passionate. So, show the passion. And I think that for me counts a lot more than particularly where you get your degree from or how many A-levels you got. I think if someone's really passionate about teaching, and I can imagine them inspiring the students, that for me is a big plus.
Yeah. And then we kind of come to the end of the interview, and I think it's always the same, isn't it? Near every school, I think it's almost just seemed like a courteous nature, is that the interviewers will go, it's like, so any questions from you? How should candidates approach that?
It's a golden opportunity, I would say, that a few candidates do shoot themselves in the foot at this point and just say, oh no, it's okay, I've got no questions. And I think, well, that's kind of almost ending the interview on a bit of a downer. So it's your chance to kind of find out a bit more information about the school. This might be your only chance speaking to the SLT team, potentially, or the interviewing team. So it's your chance to find out what isn't on the website, what isn't maybe available through the inspection report. So it's your chance to get maybe the more, the more human details. So ask, why is there a vacancy? Is it the fact the school's expanding, which is a good sign? The school's doing well, more students. Is it because the last person left midway through the year? I mean, I think that's the key thing. What's staff turnover like? Is it more or less in the last year? Has that been going up or down? I quite like, and I had a great question the other day. A candidate said, tell me what your school feels like. What would it feel like walking around your school? And I really liked that. I thought that's a brilliant question to ask, to actually get me, how would I describe the school and how it would feel? And I thought, yeah, that really, and that candidate stuck in my head because they asked a really, really good question. So those sorts of things. And I would say as well, if you've got the head of department there, do ask some subject-specific questions. Find out about the exam boards. Find out about what the class sizes are like. Find out, are the numbers strong at IGCSE? Are they strong at A-level? What are the chances of me getting some post-16 teaching? That's your chance to really ask those kind of last questions and get yourself, and find out, say, what are you looking for? That's a really key question. What is it you're looking for in your ideal candidate? Because what they say, if that's not you, then even if they offer you a job, you probably shouldn't go any further, because if they're describing a teacher or a kind of a sort of professional that doesn't really chime with your values and your teaching philosophy, then that will help you make your decision really about your future.
That's perfect. I think. Well, firstly, thank you for going through those with us, Michael. I think anyone watching this is going to benefit tremendously from your insight and experience in terms of prepping for interviews. Even though we go through that, it's never always as easy as just having those things. As it can be a nervous time.
No, well, it's like a lesson. You can have all the key ingredients of a lesson and it still doesn't work. And I've also had some people that have done none of those things and I've still employed. So it's one of those things. It's a rough guide.
Yeah.
These are things that give you a bit more of a chance. It's like those marginal gains. They're kind of doing these things. If you don't do these things, then it's going to probably make your interview a bit trickier and your chance of getting appointed a lot smaller. So yeah, it's not a golden list. It's purely some good pointers. And if you do these things, you'll just increase your chance, hopefully, of making not getting the job, but making the right decision.
Perfect. Well, really, really appreciate your time today. So thank you ever so much.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Alex.
All right.